The Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr. Pepper. And now, Coach Bill Clark.
Well, season's greetings. Welcome in to the Coach Bill Clark Show. Landrum Roberts, along with the coach, Bill Clark. And look what is under the tree. We have the coach, Jack Crow. I feel really, really special. I'm just going to butt out and let you two just impart all of your college football wisdom.
Pat not here again.
No, he's not.
But we get Jack today, Coach Crow. So
that's an upgrade.
Yeah, so
yeah,
we're glad to have Coach Crow here.
Yeah, we are. Coach, how are you?
I'm good. People just don't know what kind of Bill Clark fan I am, so I wanted to make sure that it's made perfectly clear here. You know, as a coach, you always want to think you passed something along the tree or whatever. I just want to talk about trees. I just want to make sure people understand I claim Bill under my tree.
Under your tree?
Yeah, under my tree, yeah.
Okay, all right.
We'll take that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, Coach Crow, and your extensive experience as a college head football coach, but also as an OC, let's start with the Iron Bowl and what happened last Saturday in Tuscaloosa. Coach, I want to start with you, just your big 30,000-foot view of what we saw during that game, on the field, on the sideline, but also with the final score.
Yeah, so obviously I think we saw that side of Milroe, that we've been – is it in every other game or whenever that comes out where he's a physical runner, threw the ball well. He had the one interception, but I thought he was the difference along with the defense. I thought the defense for Alabama is really probably since they decided they were going to get more physical and really be a little bit more of a disciplined team. I think their defense has really played well. Of course, they had their turnovers. What do we have, 4 turnovers in the game? But, I think Auburn did not play bad. They didn't run the ball enough. They did not run the ball enough. But I think this was a game where Alabama really played well defensively, and then you had Milroe.
Again, he mentioned that, and I want to ask you and say whatever you want, Coach, obviously, but run the ball enough. How many times, and I realize that there's situational and there's matchups and there's all that good stuff, but how many times does Hugh Freeze and that staff have to be reminded that number 27 in your backfield is your best weapon? Run him more than 12, 13 times. Why did that happen again?
I can't explain it. I mean, I'm sort of made from the other side of the world. I may have tried too hard to run those guys back in my day, but they left a lot of gas in their tank. Is all I got to say, and they know that. I mean, it's been talked about. I think there's a lack of concept there. I think they are built in a concept of whatever the defense tells them to do, that's what they're going to do, and all you got to do is walk somebody up, and they're not going to run it. If we'd have used that principle, Bo Jackson wouldn't have got it very much when I was down there. I can tell you that, because there was every design that was, you knew when you got there that the numbers were going to tell you not to do it. Well, you know what? We're going to do it anyway. They just not made that way.
Is that from your point of view? Is that a Jimmy's and Joe's on the offensive line? Do Auburn fans have hope that some of these head-scratching in-game decisions that we saw, and not just that game, but really magnified in close games where you felt like maybe a decision here or there, hindsight is, your old coach used to say, is what, 50-50? but what?
That's what he said.
Is there hope that this gets rectified?
I'm not optimistic.
Okay.
And I'm not here to win a popularity contest. I just don't see it. But I've never seen it with you. I've never seen it. And I think they've created a lot of uncertainty with their players about what their basic makeup is. And, they're always going to let the numbers decide what happens. I mean, if they've got to have a passing game to be able to be competitive that's superior to what they got, then so be it. I hope he gets it. But I'm not looking at Auburn. Auburn has been Auburn for a long time. Auburn out-toughs people. And you knew it when way back. That 72 team, they throw 6 passes a game with a tailback that probably wasn't nothing but tough, Henley. It's always been there like that. I don't know. It just doesn't look like Auburn to me. I don't see the people wearing the jerseys that look like the other people I saw that were successful wearing it. I just don't see it.
Coach, you want to follow up on that?
Yeah, and I think obviously we've talked about decision-making in the run-pass game that's RPO related, and I thought they had gotten away from that, and I think to Coach's point, there's times, and we said about this throughout the year, and I always wanted this in our plan. We're running the ball. If we got to go 13 personnel, we're running the ball. We're going to have an extra hat for their extra hat. Yeah. Now, they want to zero us up, then we've got to be able to do some things there, but the running back's too good for that. Once again, give Alabama's defense credit. I've really always been more of in the giving credit. I think their defense, Alabama's defense played well. Back to the game, obviously 28-14, the score. I think Auburn had their chances. They didn't score in the red zone, but I always give, you got to give Alabama some credit. I think Auburn's, especially in their field goal game, has been an issue too. But let's segue that into Alabama. Since we're going to talk, I think, about both teams and then finish up with UAB. Where is Alabama going into the chance to maybe make this playoff run? I think we touched on two things I think are very important. Where is Milroe when they won, and where was he when they lost? Whatever that was, and I think this is speculation. Was he banged up? Where was his head? What caused him to not be the guy? I mean, we saw that guy. We saw the guy in the games they won, the Georgia game, et cetera. And I don't know if Vandy was exactly the case, but, I think Tennessee, Oklahoma for sure, it wasn't that guy. And then I think the other piece, and I want to hear what you say, Coach Crow, but I think defensively, I think when they started making discipline and toughness, minus some DB stuff there at the end of the game that I know they were disappointed in, but I think their defense really came on and of course, got a lot of turnovers.
Yeah, and Cade is sort of like you. He comes from a tree.
Yeah.
Bill comes from a tree. He wasn't the first coach in his family, and they were connected to a bunch of great coaches. The same way with Cade. Cade's first stop was at Jacksonville State, by the way, and he played them. But I tell you what he did. Those guys got tougher and tougher, and more discipline, and more discipline. It's like any 8-man front. They really are playing for takeaways. And I'd be dang by the end of the year if it wasn't. It was like playing an old Georgia team.
Yeah.
That's what it was like. I mean, Vince Dooley coached Georgia's team. In terms of quarterback, I don't know if they trust him. I don't know if he trusts himself. I ask you a question. Why did Nick Saban not play him against South Florida? That's some conjecture you could add to this.
Yeah.
There was a reason.
Right.
And I could guess on what that reason is. It wasn't in the best interest of Alabama when he did it, and almost cost him a football game. He was trying to make a point and put some certainty in what their quarterback situation is. Well, I don't think it's ever become certain who the guy is, what you can expect. You turn it on, you don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah, and I think one of those things, and that's a great point, I mean, you've talked about it off the air, is who are you as a quarterback? Yeah. What's your strength? And when you try and become somebody else, and sometimes you hate it, but your strength is you're a runner who throws good play action passes, throws quick game, and be that guy. Yeah. And sometimes you try and be somebody else or whatever, and I once again, and we go back to Oklahoma a few weeks ago, and I wanted to give their defense credit. Yeah. But I think when he's on, I think we can see it, we know what it looks like, and then when it's not, it's we see it too.
Yeah, a really good point. So now Auburn, they finished the season 5-7. We'll start there as you look back on this Auburn Tiger football team. Coach Clark, I'll start with you, and then Coach Crow, if you can follow that up. Your expectations based on what you got and then moving forward.
We kept saying they were there. I mean, I think when you looked at their defense was solid all year. PAT field goal, or field goal, I should say. I know they were disappointed in that, and that's how you win these close games. They protected the ball pretty well throughout the year. So what were they not doing? Well, one, we know they weren't running the ball enough, and when they did run the ball, they had success. And their run game led to play action throws, and so I guess now we're talking about recruiting. I mean, and I think that's when this year for them is I would make or break, at least for this staff. So they sound like they're having a really good recruiting year. This one's behind them, and but I think those things we've talked about, you better have somebody at that QB spot that can really be a guy that can throw it. Yeah. If that's who you're going to be, So I think that's where it's going to come down to who do they get at that spot, and what's this recruiting class look like?
this is what Bill and I talk about. We talk a lot about these kinds of things, in a general way, but every coach looks at the result of a season. He has to accept that every bit of it is him.
Yep.
Some things need to be reorganized. I mean, there's no way you can accept that. And we look at poor quarterback play. But, they had a quarterback coach, an offensive coordinator, and a head coach all involved in the game management around that quarterback. That ain't working. That ain't working. That boy was a lot better quarterback at Michigan State than he was at Auburn. A lot better. He was better coached at Michigan State. Now, I'm not saying anything directly about those coaches, because I know those guys. I know all of them, and they're all good coaches. The organization of it ain't working. So somebody needs to get in, somebody needs to get out, whoever they're going to train. I go back to Alabama's quarterback. He's had a different quarterback coach this year, last year. I don't think the boy has ever consistently had the same thoughts put in his head over. And I coach these guys. I didn't have one that didn't wear a ring. Maybe I had one that didn't wear a ring. You start, and Bill does this, you start with what you expect him to be, and you drill it in him every day. He don't have time to have a phone call with his dad to change his mind about who he is, because you have total control of how he wakes up and goes to bed. And Bill had one when he first started, couldn't walk and chew gum, but he knew what was in his brain every day, and the guy won. How you coach him.
Yep. Coach Crow's on his soapbox. He's doing his best Nick Saban, because he's pounding. This is not a podium, but this is a wooden.
Sorry about that.
And
all right.
Minus the I-8s, I thought that was a pretty good Saban, Coach. I appreciate it. Anything you'd like to follow up with there?
No, I think he said it because we go as our quarterback goes. He's the reflection of the coach. He's the reflection he's a reflection of the coordinator, but that's the reflection of the head coach. So that's the mirror you got to hold up. And this is the world that I've lived in, that Jack lived in, of it's you. And that's what makes that job so tough, when you really believe we win or lose in what I do. And I remember the losses. And that doesn't mean you guys aren't good coaches. It's just these decisions you're making in this particular time, they work or they don't work, or I've got to do it better. And I think that's the mirror they're holding up. Obviously we got to finish up with UAB, which is, Jack's a UAB grad. I was a UAB coach. I mean, you
Blazer.
I was there for all 12 of them.
Yeah. So, I think the question is what happens moving forward. I mean, obviously they had the chance to win the last game. The kicker, who's been so good for them all year.
God bless him, Jonah.
I mean, he was, I guess, special teams player of the year.
Yeah.
So, it's just sometimes it's that night. Sometimes it's other things. But obviously they had some. They had their two good wins against Tulsa and Rice. Alcorn State. They should win. But it's going to be interesting. I've seen a lot of guys get in the transfer portal. It's worrisome. I mean, it's worrisome as a former UAB coach. It's worrisome as a UAB alum. So I'm I got guys that are still there. I'm praying for better things.
Coach Clark, it is now time for our Smart Bank Smart Call of the Week.
Well, we was always thank our guys at Smart Bank, and the cool thing about Smart Bank, small town banking feel, where you go into the bank, they know who you are, you've got people that are waiting on and take care of you and answer your questions, but all the amenities of a big bank. So Smart Bank locations, they're really popping up everywhere. Started in Tennessee, but now you're getting them all over the state of Alabama and Georgia.
It is now time for our web concrete and building materials building blocks to victory, Coach. And we got championship weekend, got a big one. Maybe it's not as big as far as the ramifications and the outcome of the game, but a rematch, one we saw in Austin earlier in the season, Georgia and Texas. What you got on this one?
Well, obviously with the winner getting a first round bye, that's a huge deal, and it's hard to beat somebody twice. So we've got Georgia went to Texas, obviously, and put it on them pretty good. Texas is playing well. Georgia keeps finding a way to win this game on what was a 7-8 overtime game against Georgia Tech. Great game. Georgia, Lord, they found a way to win it. Georgia at Texas up 23-0 at half. Texas did make a comeback. Texas is favored now. Very excited about what Texas is doing defensively. I think they're the best defense in the SEC. I think Georgia's been very up and down now. You're basically a home game, there in the Dome. And I do think Beck. I think they're doing more things. I do want to brag on Bobo. I think Mike Bobo, who was coach for Coach Crow, I thought he did a really good job in that Georgia Tech game. And that game really should have been over.
Yeah.
And I thought, of course, they've been in big games before, but I thought they kept playing. That's why you can't write them out of this game. But I do have a slight edge to Texas.
Yeah. I thought Georgia was able to beat Texas with scheme, not so much that they like the left tackle. They just confused him. They didn't run anybody by him.
Yeah.
I don't know if they can come up and do that twice. I thought the schemes had Ewers uncertain. And I tell you what, when he's uncertain, and if they can do that again, they'll beat him again.
Well,
they created some uncertainty.
I mean, think about how many mistakes they made down there at the end of the game in Texas, where the game's over, and it's back to back.
Yeah.
To keep them in the game. I mean, you do that with Georgia, you get beat. So it's going to be, it'll be interesting. But I've got Texas slightly favored.
I want to go back to something you said, and we had this debate on the show, and I've experienced as a high school player. You guys have experienced it probably as players and coaches throughout your illustrious careers. But why is it so hard for one team to beat the same team twice in one season?
We could talk about mentality all day. We were talking about. And maybe something we talk about at the end of the show today is preparation. When you have 2 weeks, I talk about open dates all the time, but the psyche and the mentality, especially of young men, or yes, any young person, 18, 22-year-olds are still youngsters to us, but confidence, something to prove, something to make me play harder, something to make me practice harder, something for a coach to not want to get beat by the same people twice. Where I relax a little bit, I get a little more confident. Whether it's players, I mean, you hear all these, all the things that makes winning happen is those things. When you say, Coach,
there's something natural about it. If you just use your own team as an incubator and you scrimmage your offense against your defense in the spring, that's the only measurement you got. It is almost predictable. That the offense is going to get the best of the defense. The next time they go out there, the defense is going to get the best. I mean, no matter how you scheme it not to be that way.
That's right.
You just, for 40 years, you just see that there's this equilibrium of two things against each other that really don't make – the offense may be better than the defense.
That's right.
But if they line up against them enough, the defense is going to get
Well,
them.
and those competitors on the other side, which is, any of us go – and I'm tired of getting talked about. I'm tired of being got on to.
Yeah.
I'm tired of that. I'm walking down the hall and they're showing that game on every TV.
Yeah.
Every time you go in a meeting, that score pops up, and you're so sick of it. Where they are not. Now, it can still happen. You can still, but it just is so invariable that how many times that happens.
We try to make this game into about X's and O's and Willies and Joes, but it's a game of emotions.
No doubt.
That's right.
And I think that's the only way you can describe it. There's something emotionally you can't control that goes back and forth.
Coach, I know you don't play golf, but I'll draw the comparison of this. You're standing on the tee box. You hit you shank your first tee off the tee ball off the tee box. There's a good chance when you're more relaxed and you're so pissed off at the world, you're going to hit the next one right down the middle. I think that you could maybe say the same about rematches and just
that happens to you
the
too.
mentality. Yeah, it happens to me. That second guy is great. The first guy is absolutely
Who
terrible.
is that
But
guy?
go and try to hit two perfect tee shots off the same tee box, and it's not possible. You need to pick up golf.
I believe
you would experience it like
That
we
was
did.
prior to back surgery.
All right, web building materials, building blocks to victory. Before we get to more stuff about our friends there at Webb, we got to talk about a game that could have implications on a team like Alabama in the college football playoff rankings, SMU and Clemson in the ACC championship.
I tell you, I'm very excited to watch SMU play. I do. You know who beat them? BYU. Of course, we always got to talk about BYU. So
they got to beat somebody, right, Coach?
Right,
It ain't you.
Yeah. So obviously that was their one loss this year. I got to see a little bit of that game. Hadn't been able to watch them a lot. This is going to be a good game. Clemson, had every chance to win against South Carolina. We could talk about South Carolina's quarterback all day. I think we all know that. Going to be a great game, especially I believe that this is a play-in game, but it's probably a play-out game, which we'll talk about more later. And I'm going to go ahead and talk about Webb Concrete and Building Supplies. Phil Webb, we were at the high school championships, and there was Phil Webb. He's so philanthropic. So, I mean, what charity is he not part of? So just if that tells you a little bit about the company, obviously my son works there in Pell City, but they do it all, concrete, all the building supplies and flooring. So there's locations everywhere. I won't go to every one of them today. I do it usually every show, but great company, and go get your building needs there with those guys at Webb.
Alabama Power, they bring us our Alabama Power top 5 of the week. It's going to be a little bit more challenging for you, Coach.
Well,
there's some teams that stub their toe.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I think obviously you're getting ready for who's your playoff teams, and so of course you're the expert on this because you guys talk about it every day.
That's right.
But Oregon 1, Texas 2, Penn State 3, and I'm really going on now. I'm going on numbers of wins and losses. Notre Dame 4, Georgia 5, Tennessee 6, SMU 7, Ohio State 8. Indiana 9, Boise 10. Now this is, but you talk about 1 loss versus 3, Alabama 11, South Carolina 12. Does Clemson get up in there, obviously, if they can beat SMU, and that gets us in that 12-team talk?
Coach, you want to comment on that? You agree with this top 5?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I'm forward focused a little bit on, Clemson winning is going to shake some trees. And listen, I've been really close with Rhett Lashley for he's a Razorback, by the way, and but I also know Clemson really well too.
Yeah, he's done a heck of a job there.
He
really has, and I tell you, their defense is. I've been surprised how well they've played because with him being an offensive guy. But
absolutely,
but that's going to be a good one.
That was the offensive coordinator that Gus couldn't make up his mind about who ought to be calling the plays. So that shows you something about that whole situation. But I just there's something at Clemson. There's something at Clemson that I know very well that I was always surprised about is, just when they get called out, you better watch out. I think you see what's going to happen if they win.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I said,
we can get it.
I don't know what the line.
That'll be the wild card.
You know this. What's the line? I mean, I don't know. I'm just giving you.
Honestly, Clemson and SMU. I don't have it off the top of my head.
Well, I'm sorry, but say that. But I don't know what the facts of it say. Culture?
Yeah.
I know culture, both of them. Man, in a battle of cultures, I mean, you talking about something at Clemson now that's,
Our top 5 of the week, Coach, is brought to you by our friends at Alabama Power.
Yeah, once again, we just appreciate our guys at Alabama Power. They're so philanthropic. They're involved in, we were talking about Phil Webb a minute ago. Alabama Power is involved in every charitable organization and give back to the community you can think of, and obviously conservation as well.
Donahue Chevrolet, they bring us our Drive for Success each week here on the Bill Clark Show. And, Coach, what are you focusing on this week?
Yeah, this week we're talking about what does a Clemson win mean to Alabama? So we were just discussing a minute ago in our top 5, which really is our top 12. I think the elephant in the room is the elephant, which is Alabama. I think if Clemson's in, I think SMU's out. I really do. So I think this is a play-in game. We've already discussed it twice. So I think that is truly a play-in game for the winner of that game. So that's why I think that one's going to be so important to watch. Yeah, and of course our friends at Donahue Chevrolet. I've got a Tahoe from them and many other vehicles through the years. So they've got some really great year-end deals. I know if you're military, student, first responders, they've got specials for you for all you folks out there. DonahueChevrolet.com. And then what's our tagline? We always say.
Well, you're not going to pay the dealer doc fee,
right,
but also all the other special groups that you mentioned and what they do there at Donahue. They reach out and very philanthropic, as other corporate partners here on the show. But no dealer doc fee, and you're not going to pay any APR for about 5 years on certain vehicles, and you can pre-order some of those makes and models right now. Coach, it's time for our Radiance Technologies Defense of the Week.
Yeah, I ended up picking Michigan against Ohio State. I picked Michigan. I really felt like that game was one up front. And one of the things Ohio State really prides their self on, this was not an overlook either. This was not, Ohio State, the second that game was over, if you were watching that game, Ohio State Coach Day was talking about, we're getting ready for the next one. He was already ready after they had beaten Indiana to get ready for that game. There was no sneak up. They were at home. Yeah. And Michigan dominated them up front. Yeah. And, we were talking about that off air, Coach Crow, but their D-line physically dominant. I think there's a history there, that at Michigan. But that game was won with defense.
Yeah. looked like the Bo Schembechler defense in the Sugar Bowl.
that you played against.
We couldn't score a touchdown again.
Yeah.
They're just a lot more physical. I mean, a lot more physical, and I mean sort of undermanned physicalness too. Not brawn against brawn, but just god dang toughness
and seem to want it more. Whatever you want to say there. I know that's always can
focus.
Be.
I mean, just unbelievable discipline and focus. I think we all look at a culture like Ohio State's put themselves in, and you wonder what the room is like when you're there coaching them, what the continuity is. But there is distinctively more continuity in Michigan than there is at Ohio State.
At least in that game, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Radiance Technologies, Coach, we know them very well from that triumphant victory that you have there in Shreveport with the Independence Bowl that they sponsor, but they also do a lot of other fine work across this great land of ours.
Yeah, I tell you, I got to go speak to their employees, and they truly are in the defense of our country, making lasers that shoot down drones and so many other things. But you got to have a Department of Defense tag to walk in that place. But these guys, Bill Bailey and Radiance Technology, Bill Bailey is the owner. Alabama guy, just great fans of college football, and just really appreciate them sponsoring our show.
Well, Buffalo Rock and our good friends at Dr. Pepper, they bring us this show every single week, Coach. And Jimmy Lee and the fine folks there, they've been doing it here in the state of Alabama for a long, long time.
Well, you see the hat I'm wearing. It's Buffalo Rock Day. And Jimmy Lee and those guys, man, what a great job they do throughout our community. And, of course, Jimmy's a great friend of Jack's and I, so appreciate them and appreciate Dr. Pepper for support. So really the last thing we want to talk about in the show, and I think this is probably something that some of that behind-the-scenes stuff that we talk about is preparation, and I've talked a lot about throughout the year about having that open date and what does that mean for rest, recovery, who handles it the best. Now we're fixing to get ready as we get ready for playoffs. Who has a week? Who has 2 weeks? So what does that mean as far as recovery? Who handles it the best as they go into getting ready for that and bowl games? Coach Crow?
I've never seen anybody doing a better job, by the way, of handling postseason than you do.
Yeah, thank you.
And you started it at Prattville. I mean, it was almost an automatic. But I can tell you there's a lot of people, me being one of them, that never was quite satisfied about or had any certainty about how to do it because every team's a little different.
That's right.
I was with you on both trips. I saw the way you handled teams. And I think some people, have a knack at this because Coach Bryant wasn't really good in the postseason.
Yeah.
I mean, it's different.
Yeah.
And I never conquered it. I always felt like I wasn't making the right decision, which is probably why I wasn't making the right decision. And you, on the other hand, looked like you were in control of it the whole time, what you could control.
Well, I think one of the things you learn as a high school coach, how you better get good at the playoffs or you're not going to be very successful. So, I still remember something my dad always talked about. It was an old basketball deal, getting ready for the tournament. Yeah. Who is ready at the end of the year to play in the tournament in basketball is a team that keeps playing. And so I always wanted in that time of year, I wanted my guys to want to keep playing.
Yeah.
So what were the things you did that made them, and I'm speaking playoff now, which is what we're in. What team wants to keep playing? So there's got to be something in there. I don't know whether it's fun or just activities that are designed to want that team to want to keep playing together. And then what's the amount of rest versus work, that leads to success.
And when you do it, which Bill had some ways of factoring in toughness that just hit the mark to me. Pat Dye and I used to talk about, man, we need to draw back. I mean, we'd sit there and just talk about draw back, but then we'd be afraid we'd draw back, you'd lose your toughness.
Right.
And so we took too much out of them. I mean, going all the way back to August, you got to start thinking about if you're not geared that way, at the end, you'll lose it before you ever get a chance to even get there.
That's right.
Which I thought, watching you practice for 4 years, I thought you had a way of maintaining what contact was about and a high level, good tackling skills, pad level, all the things, win football games, and still leaving something there, all the way through the idea that you're going to be playing to New Year's. So, I mean, I never quite had it. I overdid it, underdid it.
Well, I don't know about that. But, you were part of so many bowl games and bowl wins. But
didn't play good in one of them.
Well, I think bottom line is we're going to have fun talking about as we get into the playoffs coming up and how teams prepare and these playoff games and how big they are.
Coach Crow, we appreciate you stopping in.
Honored.
Happy holidays to you and your family. Coach Clark, always, we appreciate that. We appreciate our friends at Buffalo Rock and Dr. Pepper. Appreciate all of you for joining us every Thursday. Join us right here on Jocks 94.5. Also, you can find us on a variety of different platforms, including the Jocks 94.5 app and various other outlets. For the coaches, I'm Landrum Roberts. Thanks for joining us this week on the Coach Bill Clark Show.
This has been the Bill Clark Show, presented by Dr. Pepper.